Democrats seem to be having this debate whether or not Maher Mamdani is a socialist or a democratic socialist. Let me settle it. He's a straight-up communist. How do I know this? Well, I'm reading between the lines when one of his major advisors says, elect more communists. Which is fine. It's fine. It's a belief system. He's allowed to believe it, and people are allowed to vote for it. But if liberals deny it, like he's just going through a goth phase, they're going to lose more elections. This is not a communist country. And this is the pendulum never lands in the middle problem I'm always about. Really, the choices we get here are either the worst version of crony capitalism or communism.
Once again, Bill Maher took aim at Zohran Mamdani, and he did not hold back. He challenged both the message and the ideas behind the campaign, breaking down his criticisms point by point during a national television appearance. Before we continue, if you enjoy quick political commentary and analysis, make sure to subscribe and support the channel. Back to the story. Maher argued that he is not interested in political rebranding or carefully chosen labels. Instead, he pointed to comments made by a prominent advisor connected to Mamdani's circle, who publicly encouraged voters to support more communist candidates. Maher's position is that this description comes directly from people within the movement itself, not from political opponents trying to attach a label.
You know what democratic socialist is? That's Mamdani, who's a straight-up communist.
No, he's not.
Okay, his philosophical pinnings, and I could read other things from the Democratic Socialist Party that show that it's not different than communism, a lot of it. They have statements about, like,
To
the
understand, I'm
government
not.
should take over industries and so forth. Like, I mean,
Well, I don't believe that, and I'm not a communist. And
but they do.
Maher reinforced his argument during a discussion with David Cross, a stance that years ago might have brought heavy criticism his way. He said that, from his perspective, the principles promoted by the Democratic Socialists closely mirror traditional communist ideas. Maher pointed to their own published positions, including expanded government control and opposition to private ownership. His criticism was that supporters market the movement one way while advancing very different policies. He argued that this gap between messaging and substance is one reason many working-class voters have become increasingly skeptical.
You are a self-described democratic socialist. Do you think that billionaires have a right to exist?
I don't think that we should have billionaires.
Then came the response Maher believes proves his point. When asked whether billionaires should exist, Mamdani gave a direct answer without backing away from it. He stated that he does not believe billionaires should exist in America. Maher argued that this comment speaks louder than any campaign slogan or political branding. In his view, it raises concerns because many of the city's largest employers and taxpayers fall into that category. Maher says that is why parts of the business community are already considering their options for the future.
Oh, let me tell you about the story that liberal algorithms locked out. Her name is Sia Weaver, and if you ask anyone in the blue sky bubble who that is, they'll look at you like a turkey looking up at the rain. But she's kind of important in New York, being Major Mamdani's chief of the Office to Protect Tenants, and since Mamdani's big issue is the rent's too damn high, yes, he stole this guy's act.
Maher then shifted the focus to a key figure chosen by Mamdani for his administration. He highlighted C. Weaver, selected to lead the city's tenant protection office. In Maher's view, this was far more than a routine appointment, because housing issues played a major role in Mamdani's campaign. He noted that promises about rent and affordability were central to the message presented to voters. Maher argued that the choice of who oversees those policies offers an important look at the priorities and direction of the new administration.
A key appointment in the most important city in the country, which is also our financial center. It matters that the mayor stands by, and so I assume stands with, someone who says things like, if you don't believe in the government's sacred right to seize private property, it's over. Seize private property. Home ownership is racist. Elect more communists. Private property, especially home ownership, is a weapon of white supremacy. Really? Even among the 20 million black Americans who own their own home?
Maher then turned to several public remarks made by Seaweaver, arguing that they reveal a much broader political outlook. He pointed to statements supporting stronger government involvement in property issues and criticism of traditional homeownership structures. Maher challenged those views by raising a question about the millions of Black Americans who own homes themselves. In his view, that example directly conflicts with the argument being presented, and he used it to question the logic behind the broader ideology.
The kind of utterances I might forgive as something a dumb white girl said while she was at Bryn Mawr. Because it's the kind of privilege hating you can only learn for $95,000 a year. But these are statements made as an adult. Yes, for co-eds from elite private colleges, you're only a lesbian until graduation, but the communism lasts a lifetime.
Maher argued that the context of those remarks matters. He joked that such comments might be easier to dismiss if they had come from a young student expressing ideas in a college setting. However, he emphasized that these statements were made later in life and presented as serious policy positions rather than casual opinions. For Maher, that distinction makes them far more significant when evaluating the views of someone holding a public role.
The problem's not her, it's Mamdani. And these are Mamdani's views as well, although he's a good politician, so he did as much as he possibly could to obscure them prior to the election. But private property is not just a core individual right. It undergirds every liberty in Western civilization, and rent control, wherever it's been tried, has been an abject failure, including in New York. You know, the famous phrase, ladies and gentlemen, the Bronx is burning, which is supposedly said during a World Series, broadcast in New York in 1977. It wasn't actually said, but there was a huge fire visible from the stadium, and so notable that the broadcasters talked about it because all these buildings were burning because they were dilapidated, or the owners didn't want them anymore because they weren't making any money off of them, and they couldn't possibly make money off of them. So they didn't invest in them and didn't have any incentive to keep them up. So what you do when you rent control a bunch of apartments, you ensure that their stock, their value goes steadily down. And then meanwhile, everyone else who's not in a rent control apartment has to pay even more because you constricted the supply. So it's just been an abject failure everywhere. So on top of just these hideous immoral views she has, she knows nothing about economics and nothing about the history of her own city.
The discussion then shifted to the historical record. During Megyn Kelly's panel, Rich Lowry pointed to past examples of rent control and the economic problems he believes followed. He referenced periods of declining property values, reduced housing supply, and situations where some renters ultimately faced higher costs. Lowry argued that policies similar to those being proposed have been attempted before with poor results. Maher echoed that view, saying the debate is not just about theory but about lessons from past experience. Both questioned whether the underlying economic challenges have changed since those earlier examples.
There is no way that the middle class, the upper middle class, the strivers, the hard workers, the college-educated business creators, there's no way that they're going to tolerate more tax, more income tax. And to think that you're going to have free transit, and free food and free housing, free everything. There's no such thing as a free lunch. My goodness, haven't we learned? There's no way to have socialism in a city that needs that needs the vibrancy of Wall Street to create the jobs. It's not just the brokers it's the grocery guy on the corner of Wall Street.
Geraldo Rivera then focused on the economic impact. He argued that many middle-class taxpayers would resist paying higher taxes to support a growing list of publicly funded programs. Rivera stressed that government benefits always require a source of funding and questioned whether such promises are sustainable over time. He also emphasized the role of New York's financial sector, local businesses, and broader private economy in generating the revenue that supports public services. In his view, concerns about those policies are one reason some investors and business leaders are already considering alternatives.
And there was 9 seats and 10 people every year. I mean, you wonder why people have heart attacks at 59. I mean, that's why. Yeah. Because that's what capitalism is. And I'm sure, Mamdani is watching this right now, as he always does, I'm sure, and saying, exactly, Bill, that's my point. Capitalism terrible. Yeah, it's terrible, except it's still better than the reverse.
Yeah.
You
Well,
want to really be, Soviet people died at 38 from being drunk all the time because they couldn't take their life under communism.
Maher acknowledged that capitalism has serious flaws and can place enormous pressure on people. He made it clear that he does not view the system as perfect. However, he argued that the alternative systems, often promoted by its critics, have their own troubling history. Pointing to life in the former Soviet Union, Maher said the comparison should be based on real-world outcomes rather than idealized promises. In his view, historical experience matters more than political slogans or optimistic descriptions.
The issue now that Andrew Cuomo is bringing up in New York is that he is a Ugandan citizen. Uganda is a country where they...
So somebody who is a dual citizen can't be mayor of New York, or?
I would renounce, if I was the dual citizen with a country whose policy, government policy was weak, yeah, I would renounce that citizenship.
Maher also focused on Mamdani's dual citizenship, noting that he holds both American and Ugandan citizenship. He argued that some voters view this as a legitimate issue for discussion, particularly given the responsibilities of leading a city as diverse as New York. While supporters dismissed the matter as largely symbolic, Maher contended that symbolism can carry significant weight in public office. He pointed to growing debate among some commentators and voters over whether public officials in such positions should maintain citizenship in another country.
And when you interview somebody, a politician, and you ask them a straight question like that, do you want Hamas to lay down and they don't give you an answer? Don't you think you should be like, you're not answering the question?
I do. That's what I do. That's why so many people won't do my show. That's why the Clintons have never been on my show. That's why AOC, and I invite these people all the time, every week. I could go down to Kamala Harris, never did the show.
Maher argued that public figures should be expected to answer direct questions clearly, especially on major issues. He said journalists have a responsibility to press for answers rather than simply moving on. Maher also suggested that some prominent Democratic politicians avoid interviews where they might face tougher questioning. In his view, that reluctance contributes to a broader trust problem. He framed the debate around Mamdani as part of a larger struggle within the Democratic Party, with disagreements between activists, moderates, and donors becoming increasingly visible as the party searches for its future direction.
Bernie, AOC, Mamdani are not Democrats. They'll be the first to tell you that. They're democratic socialists, and that's a very different thing, and I don't think people know that yet. I don't think people realize we already have a lot of socialism. Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, unemployment insurance, food stamps, veterans benefits, Pell Grants, COVID-era payments, farm subsidies, disability payments, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, corporate bailouts, and the jobs program that is building the Pentagon doesn't even want. All that is socialism, much of it appropriate to soften the edges of capitalism.
Maher then drew a distinction between traditional Democrats and figures such as Bernie Sanders, AOC, and Mamdani, noting that they openly identify with democratic socialism. His argument was that America already incorporates many social programs within a capitalist framework. According to Maher, the debate is not about adding safeguards or expanding existing benefits. Instead, he believes this wing of the movement is advocating for a more fundamental change to the economic system itself, rather than simply reforming it.
But before the whole left side of the country catches socialism fever, let's listen to the other big winner in last Tuesday's election, Virginia Governor-elect Abigail Spanberger, who, before the 24 election, said things like, if the party didn't shift to the center, we will get fucking torn apart. And we need to never use the word socialist or socialism ever again. Well, she was right, but they didn't listen. Typical, am I right, ladies? Well, at least the party has a clear choice here, very clear. One wing is saying don't ever use the word socialist again, and one is saying,
I am a democratic socialist.
Clear, huh? So how do we decide who's right? Well, it turns out we don't really have to flip a coin. We have the evidence. In 2024, 13 Democrats won. In districts, Trump also won. All moderates. This isn't rocket science. All the left-leaning think tanks have done autopsies on 2024, and they all came up with the same message: move to the center. Even the New York Times, which did so much to promote woke politics, now says the partisans are wrong. Moving to the center is the way to win. And Democrats should recognize the party moved too far left on social issues after Obama left office. Gosh, if only someone had been saying that all along.
Maher closed by highlighting a political contrast. While Mamdani celebrated his victory in New York, Virginia voters elected moderate Democrat Abigail Spanberger, who has long argued that her party should distance itself from the socialist label. Maher pointed to election results and post-election analyses that he says support a more centrist approach. In his view, the debate surrounding Mamdani reflects a larger struggle over the Democratic Party's future direction. What do you think? Share your thoughts below. And if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more content.